Tonight, January 19th, council meeting, additional venue, go-to meeting. The phone number is 1-408-650-3123. Access code is 323-691-381. Attention callers, please mute calls unless speaking. I'm going to call together the January 19th meeting. Please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bellinger.
Here.
Councilmember Crumick.
Here.
Councilmember Swift.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Legero.
Here.
And Mayor Alves.
Here, thank you. Should I read where they can watch this stuff as well?
No, you don't need to, that's
Okay, so
fine.
we're gonna move down to consent calendar?
Correct.
Very good. All right, consent calendar, before I start,
There's, if somebody has a computer and a phone on, we're hearing
can
an
hear it, yeah.
echo back.
we're getting feedback somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, we're good?
Give it a try.
It's come to my attention by way of our vice mayor that it might be a good idea if there's a reasonable amount of people here this evening to discuss the issue regarding the chickens.
Uh-huh.
We might bump that forward. Anyone have an objection to that? Okay, if we don't have an objection, let's start with that, Tammy.
So before this consent calendar,
Yeah. It's just-
so the council would need to have the motion to move item number 9
Okay,
Yeah,
in
so
front
moved.
of the consent calendar.
we'll do that now.
Okay, so we have a motion by Swift and a second.
Second.
Motion second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
It's moved. Item number 9 will now take place. Now, how do we do this? The format is, we have people come and speak. Is it pro versus, yeah.
No, I mean,
How do you wanna do it?
I think that you should give a little bit of background of why this item has been brought.
Okay,
Um,
I'll try to do what I know. And what I know is this,
Make sure you speak into the microphone so the goes.
we have two opposing thoughts here on this matter. One gentleman feels that his privacy has been encroached on, and the other individual feels they have a right. So I'm not sure what the solution's gonna be, but that's what I know about it. Would any council member like to add something to that?
Well, yes, I believe the gist of why this needs to be a discussion item is because the individual who did feel like their privacy has been encroached upon would like to have the council entertain a motion to amend the ordinance that is concerning things like chicken coops, so that I believe they have to be over 15 feet away from any side or back fence. I hope do I have that correct, Dominique? Is that the,
15 feet from the property line, correct.
Yeah.
You need to talk into
That's why I took mine off.
15 feet from the property line,
from any
sorry.
property line? Right, and so that's gonna be the gist of our discussion tonight. Do we want to consider entertaining such a motion, or do we not want to entertain considering such
Well,
an
let
idea to
me-
have staff look into that?
Let me ask you this, should we at least entertain some testimony first, and then
So
move from there?
staff did get some, public comment
Okay.
regarding the topic, so I can read those into record.
Okay,
Good evening. I was recently made aware of a proposed ban on chickens in the city of Escalon. As a resident of Escalon, I believe that the keeping of a few chickens by residents is completely in line with rural atmosphere of our community. I do not support a ban on chickens in town. Thank you for your considerations. Valerie Saunders. The next one is by Myra, and I apologize if I pronounce any names wrong, Merrill. We live in the city. Before we consider getting 3 chickens, we check the Escalon code. We have had our girls for almost a year now. They are relatively quiet, except maybe when laying or an egg or clucking around the yard when we let them out. They go to bed at dusk and remain quiet and asleep until sunrise, unlike the dogs in the neighborhood that bark or howl at every noise or whine and cry all day because they are left alone or poop on our lawn when humans are walking them and often unleashed. I can't tell you how many times we've picked up a dog or cat poop from the lawn, sidewalk, or flower beds. The coop is kept clean regularly, and our girls are contained in our backyard, not bothering anyone. I hope the chicken issues can be resolved with consideration that most backyard chicken owners don't have the luxury of the 15 feet from structures. Dear City Council, I'm weighing in on the matter of chicken coops. I do not live in the city of Escalon or the county of San Joaquin, though family does. I do raise standard bred chickens equal to purebred in dogs. I commonly keep around 75 birds, including a third of those being roosters. I wish to submit to you some facts. Chicken droppings are small and dry quickly under normal, well-kept circumstances. If they are not kept damped, they dry and have no smell and do not draw flies. In a well-kept coop, there is little chance of unusual amount of flies or smells. With around 75 birds, I rarely have maggot issues, and when I have it, it is a small area and easily dealt with. The chickens like to eat them, and once they know that maggots are there, they'll dig them out and eat them. Hens are no louder than dogs or cats. Hens provide food in both egg form and as table meat. In this economy, in this world, it is more important than ever that people are able to take small steps to care for themselves and their families. Chicken droppings are easily and discreetly composted. Kitchen scraps can go to the hens to be recycled back into the family's diet via eggs. Chickens eat the bugs that bug us and help keep the yard more clear of them, which means less pesticide use to control them. During the pandemic, they are a source of comfort and normalcy for adults and children. Think of 4-H and FFA. Caring for them takes your mind away from so many cares and onto them and their calming movements and sounds. This is what some kids are doing at home since they can't go to school and be safe. In this world, we don't have a right not to be offended. We don't have the right to push our neighbors around, to have things the way we prefer them to at our whim. I understand that some people don't want chickens. They are free to not keep chickens. What they are not free to do is dictate to everyone around them that they cannot keep chickens. That is what this amounts to. The law already exists to allow hens. I think it is unfair and obnoxious to try to take that away after people have already gotten chickens and realized how valuable they actually are, especially in a distressed world. People need to learn how to be tolerant neighbors rather than other people's lives and legal hobbies being turned upside down. This is ridiculous. Thank you for your time, Paula Shepherd. Please do not ban chickens or chicken coops. Families should be allowed to keep their pets and be able to provide for themselves with fresh eggs for their families. Carly Camacho. To whom this may concern, this letter is addressing the upcoming issue of banning backyard chickens in the Escalon city limits being presented at this evening's City Council meeting. Speaking as a member of the Escalon High School Agriculture Department, I am vehemently opposed to banning backyard chickens. Many of our FFA and agriculture students rely on keeping chickens as part of their supervised agriculture projects and agri-science projects, which are intercurricular activities. These projects are virtual in teaching our student important skills like work ethic, responsibility, and teach them where our food comes from, just to name a few. As an agriculture instructor, the opportunities to experience and immerse oneself in an agriculture is so imperative to raising and educating young people that will continue to advocate for agriculture and keep our small town thriving. To ban backyard chickens not only limits the opportunities available to our students, but limits the opportunities available to our residents. Escalon prides itself in being a farming community that supports agriculture. If we move forward on this ban, we will distance this community further and further from agriculture. Once again, I'm passionately against banning backyard chickens and hope that we can come to a resolution that does not negatively impact our students and our town. Thank you, Isabella Leventini, and again, I apologize if I said the name wrong. To the city of Escalon, this letter is being penned in regards to the issues of backyard poultry in the city of Escalon. It has been brought to my attention by many community members that there is a request to forbid raising poultry within city limits. Although reasons may vary from individual to individual who may support a measure such as this, I am deeply concerned that creating an ordinance to prohibit
Is there a way that I
raising.
can interject real quick?
Yeah, mute.
My name is Raul Barone. I've been a long time, citizen of Escalon.
Oh, hold on, just a moment. I'm reading into record letters that the city has received regarding
I'm
this
just saying
matter.
characterization, because nobody wants a ban. My parents and I are the ones who put in the,
So-
brought the issue up originally.
Okay, I understand that, but I have a responsibility. We need to read these letters in as they were presented, and we will listen to other comments from both those that are in the council chambers and those that are on the go-to meeting.
All right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Although reasons may vary from individual to individual who may support a measure such as this, I'm deeply concerned that creating an ordinance to prohibit raising poultry in Escalon is a mistake and will have direct impact on the quality of life of our residents. First, you have to ask yourself why our residents raise poultry. The answer is not simply that they like birds, but these birds have a purpose. Backyard poultry has become popular in the past decade, and it is because of their ease of maintenance as well as their practicality of their input versus outputs that folks are keeping a couple of birds on hand even in town. According to a 2014 article, Backyard Chickens in the United States, a survey of flock owners by the University of California at Davis, 95% of the respondents in their research stated that the major reasons for keeping chickens were as food for home use. Once California's Prop 2 was passed in 2008, cost of poultry production increased, and that cost has been passed on to the consumer. The price of eggs alone has increased by 150%. This is from Associated Press in 2017. Now, with COVID-19's impact on the food system, food insecurities in the United States has increased, and backyard poultry are even more popular. This is Chia T. U.S. News and World Report, December of 2020. On the other hand, what are the reasons why residents would want to ban backyard poultry in the city limits? Noise, smell. If those are the reasons, then will dogs and cats be next? And if these are the reasons, then those motivations sound quite selfish, to put it bluntly. We allow much larger pets in the city limits that serve the purpose of just being one's pet. Yet this new poultry banning ordinance will deny our residents the opportunity to feed their families in these uncertain times with a couple of chickens. Escalon needs to wake up and look around. Many cities, big ones like Stockton, which is in our county, allows backyard poultry. Just this past September, the Stockton City Council voted unanimously to update the city's laws to allow more urban farming by its residents. Now Stocktonians can have backyard chickens, ducks, and bees. They recognize that the ramifications of the pandemic on food security can be eased by their urban ag ordinance, and at the same time are following the models of other cities doing the same. I urge the city to look at this more closely, do right by your residents who need chickens to lighten the burden of their weekly grocery bill, look to other cities who have allowed urban agriculture for guidance on how to create a safe set of guidelines for residents to have backyard poultry. Make this decision based on data and research rather than pressure and conjecture. Sincerest regards, Josh Hyatt, President, San Joaquin Junior Show and Auction Council, AgFest. And also by Ken Van Gorkum of Escalon Feed Supply. Dear City Council, the idea of limiting backyard chickens to only those who have an area in their yard that is 15 feet away from a structure and a fence is ridiculous. By creating this limitation, you are effectively telling city residents that we cannot have our own source of food during a pandemic. We are a farming town, and you are deciding if we have our own means of producing food at our home. If this vote passes, will you then try to say that no one can have gardens in town because it attracts the wrong kinds of bugs? This is not right, and I feel this is an idea from people that have no clue what this town and its people stand for. This sounds like a policy people from the Bay Area would make. Having had neighbors that moved from the Bay Area, they bring their failed policies to our towns and try to change them. This is one such policy I am sure has been brought by someone who does not understand what being self-sufficient means. If this passes, you can expect people to leave this town because, once again, the people we voted in to represent us are no longer doing that for the majority, but only for those that try to limit free thinking and self-sufficiency. Why not stop charging school taxes when schools are closed? That is more reasonable than trying to remove chickens from people's yards that want them. Sincerely, Matt Stevens. Dear City Council, every backyard in the United States can contribute its share to a bumper crop of poultry and eggs in 1918. This is a statement in history, and now there is consideration to take this away from Escalon citizens by requiring a certain amount of space between structures. Most lots in Escalon would not be able to accommodate what you are asking for. As a property owner, I'm very upset that this is being considered, as we already have our ordinances regarding the keeping of chickens, and during these uncertain times of being in a pandemic, where it is more important than ever to be able to be self-sufficient, I feel this will hinder my rights as a homeowner in Escalon to provide eggs for my family. You may have forgotten the run on the grocery stores as panic set in, and I feel if this passes, this will be one step to further limit what we can grow in our backyards. I believe that this subject may have come up from one disgruntled individual, and now a community that was founded on its agriculture may be taking our rights away to have poultry because of one citizen's complaint. I looked Escalon up on Wikipedia, and there it states, Escalon is only growing its agriculture in new ways. But with these new setback requirements being considered, will this still be true? Sometimes forward thinking is really backwards. Sincerely, Patricia Verkamp Stevens. And that is the last one that I have.
Okay, I want to say a couple of things, then I'll open it up. To begin with, there is no ban on the chickens that was ever thought of amongst any of us, so I don't know where that came from, the rumor mill. So whoever started that one, you're wrong. We didn't talk about banning chickens. We have no intention of banning chickens. That's number one. Number two, the other rumor. The gentleman that we're discussing who is opposing the proximity of the chickens is not my best friend. We are not close friends. He is a neighbor. I have talked to him on more than one occasion over the 15 or 20 years he's lived there. That's the second rumor. Now, back to what we're talking about this evening. I don't know what the city has in terms of legal rights to do much about this. I don't know. Have we looked into that, Tammy?
In regards to the legal rights?
Legalities of it.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
ask a couple questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, so, just so I understand, and I think everyone else needs to understand, this is a neighbor dispute,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Correct.
We're getting no other complaints from other people about chicken coops, about chickens in the backyards or anything like that, right? And we're talking about different ordinances. We're talking about an ordinance 6.08.020 that says you can keep 6 animals, and there's some limitations on that. Chickens fall under that, roosters, you can't have a rooster. We're not even discussing that ordinance. We're not talking about changing the ordinance. The ordinance isn't before us for any kind of discussion about removing it, editing it, amending it, or anything. Okay, so then it becomes an issue about setbacks. So where is the authority for the setbacks?
So currently, our municipal code does not have any specific regulations on setbacks for chicken coops or animal enclosures. The closest one we have in the municipal code, which the council recently updated about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years ago now, was that all structures under 120 square feet we're not subject to setback requirements. So looking at that municipal code that was recently changed, the chicken coop is less than 120 square feet. It is in the setback requirement, and so in that manner, we had updated the code to address stormwater issues, to make sure that no water was crossing property lines. In this case, the chicken coop was created with a storm drain that directs the water back onto their property as opposed to crossing the property line. So there is nothing in the code at this time that requires the chicken coop to have a setback.
And that all came about over the shed issue. Can you have a shed
Correct, yes,
3
there's
feet
a lot
within
of
the
them
fence,
now.
or has it gotta be 5 feet off the fence or the property line? So that is a stretch to get this coop to fall under the setbacks.
It is.
This particular coop to fall into the setbacks. So there is no authority for us to
Currently
do
in the
anything
code.
about the coop.
Not at
So
this
we
time.
would have to take all the input from the community and come up with some ordinance that would control chicken coops in the backyard.
That's what's being asked
Specifically where
tonight.
they'd be located in the
So
yard is
that's-
what
That's the
requested.
sole issue here, is to have a discussion with the community, particularly because of the social media conversations that were going on, to actually put it out there, say people that are affected by this could come in, give feedback to the council, and we can decide if it's such an issue that we actually need to take some action and put a new rule on the books. That's the issue tonight. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on what this was about.
Correct, and so, yeah, we did receive a request from the neighbor to consider applying some type of setback, and their recommendation was a 15-foot. Maybe it's less than that, maybe it's altered in some way. That's the idea that they've presented at this time. I'm sure if there was something else proposed, maybe it would be able to be more flexible. The issue they're experiencing is a public nuisance. It's right next to the fence, the property line that's shared. And in most cases, that would be a civil matter, but they have brought it to our attention because they're claiming it's a public nuisance, and so it attracts flies, noise, it's right by their bedroom window, and so those are the issues that they're having with it, that have made them approach the city to try to alleviate.
So what is the typical process to start looking at a new ordinance or to address a nuisance complaint?
So those are two separate items. So if we were to move forward with updating the ordinance, typically, we look at what other cities are doing in terms of chicken coops, if they have specific regulations on chicken coops, or if they're that type of use, storage of animals, however they define it. If anybody else has those type of regulations on the books, and we can take a look at other cities that are in our community that are similar in the agricultural aspect as us, and see what they have and present those. We could also take the existing code that we have now, and if it's as simple as just adding a setback of some size, maybe not necessarily 15, and ask that be changed. So setbacks are typically
These setbacks-
regulated under Title 17, which is our zoning code. So any amendments that are made to our zoning code would go through both Planning Commission and Council for approval. Regarding the item on the public nuisance, the city receives complaints regarding public nuisances. We investigate every complaint that we do receive. So typically, something related to animals would go through our police department / animal control, and they would send an officer out to conduct an inspection. And then depending on the officer that's sent out, it's their determination whether a public nuisance exists.
And that's happened.
That's happened.
Why are the setbacks? Why are the setbacks are even a question here? I mean, they're not. They're
Excuse me,
not.
just a minute, please. Give us a moment. Just a minute, if they ask to be speaking, how do we address that?
Don't
Well,
have a hearing
I
for
mean,
They're
you
not
would,
permanent structures.
you would
I
need
will
to
ask
ask
for it.
them.
I will ask for it. Yeah, okay.
I-
I got it.
Yeah.
Excuse me, when we're ready for some exterior input, we'll let the people know, okay? Right now, we're trying to work through this. so please be patient. Okay, back to this. Where were we?
So the city has taken the actions within its authority to take a look at the issue.
Correct. We have had animal control officers go out to the location and inspect the
Okay.
Now, one other question I have, we have never experienced this situation before, have we?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I
I've
did a
been
little
here the last 5
survey.
years.
I walked around to a couple people's homes that have chickens. One is right across the street from my house to the south. And I asked him how his neighbor was dealing with the chickens and his thing. And he said, well, we told him where they were at, we showed them, and they had no problem with it. I said, okay, good. So I went to the other neighbor down the road, which is west of me, 2 houses over. I asked them about their chicken pen. He said, well, it's out of here. It's a large lot, so he can put it anywhere he wants. There's not, and no one's ever complained, but again, it's a pretty good sized lot, so there's not an issue there. I don't know what to think. I mean, it's a situation where we're not banning chickens, but we do think privacy is, in my opinion, very important. And I just think we need to understand we should all get along, and the fact that they may or may not have to move those chickens is not gonna take the chickens away from them, but it is gonna solve the problem with the neighbor who never had a problem before.
I think,
So, go ahead.
I think the question is the need to, we have never had an issue like this before, and therefore the need to make a change to the ordinance when we have existing remedies in place, if they are a nuisance, to be able to solve that nuisance problem. What did end up happening? What were the results? What were the findings when PD came out? Was it a nuisance?
No. At none of the times was there a issue that presented a nuisance.
Okay.
What was the claim of the specific nuisance on the claim?
Noise, flies,
Odor.
and those type of things, and their window being in that proximity to where they felt like they can't open their window because of those items, and then going outside, there's heavy flies, around in the yard, so.
Okay.
And the odor.
Okay, so, do you think we maybe ought to open this up and get some feedback from the people on the phones before we go any further, or do you wanna keep going with this?
Oh, let's have some feedback.
Let's have some feedback, everybody agree
Have some
with that?
feedback.
All right, we're gonna open up some feedback from those on the phones. Identify yourself, please, so we know who we're talking to. Go ahead.
This is Max. As far as the setbacks, why are we having a setback issue? Most people's homes are 50 feet wide by, and in the backyard, it's only 20 feet deep. So if it's a 15-foot setback to a structure that's not even a permanent structure, it's movable. That's legal. So the 15-foot setback, I don't even know why that's even a question. And the fly situation, I mean, dog poop, that tracks flies. And it was a bad fly season this year. It was a bad fly season last year. I go to people's houses that don't even have chickens or dogs, and it was a bad fly season. So this year was a bad fly season. Last year was a bad fly season. Chickens, they do get more flies on poop, but it was a bad season. So we have to put that into factor as well. I don't see why this even made the agenda, being that we have a municipal code in the city that says we can have chickens. You guys. Roosters, I get it, no roosters. It seems to me like it's a neighborly dispute. Some people like chickens, some people like dogs, some people hate dogs, some people hate chickens. But that's up to those neighbors. And I don't think that I understand that there was no ban involved with this, but to put a new ordinance with setbacks and you do need to keep up a chicken pen just like you need to keep up the yard, but it seems very, very elementary to me. And making a big deal, like, I don't know. I just don't see anything in the code.
Okay,
All right, and next would be Raul Barron, who's
Okay.
requested to speak.
speak. Go ahead, Raul.
Hi, members of the council and the public. My name is Raul Barone. I'm the son of the people who put the issue, about the chickens and involved. My dad, Raul, also, and senior, and my mother, Kelly. We've been, they've been residents there for over 35 years, and they've never had an issue with neighbors about anything before. And the characterization of a ban is completely, it's not even relevant. We don't care if they don't care if they have chickens. The fact of the matter is that, one day it was there, one day it wasn't there, the next day it was, and it was, fixed upon, the structure of the house on the side, their structure, but also against the fence that my parents and them, share. And, they've asked them like, oh, can you guys move it? And they basically told my parents, no, they will not move it. Even though, my parents cordially asked them and, have been, trying to take the steps beforehand as neighbors to, get them to move it to a place where they have a lot of room in the back. Their back, from fence to fence, not deep, but wide, is about 70 feet. So that's why we thought 15 feet when we proposed the ordinance amendment, as a kind of an expectation or, a requisite would be, not over the top in any way, so that they could maybe just move it, because they seemed adamant on not moving the chicken coop, even though there is significant flies, it smells. My parents can't even have their dogs in the backyard on that side anymore, because, the runoff from the water when they do clean it, and that can cause diseases for our dogs. They have two German Shepherds, and just Malinois German Shepherds, and they don't want them to get sick either. So the big issue was, we just wanted them to move it to a space where it wasn't going to bother, my parents, and they can enjoy their chickens as much as possible. And, the police department, I believe, had gone out about 3 times, and they did make them take some chickens away because they had too many. But, not everybody knows how many chickens you're supposed to have. I didn't know how many chickens you're supposed to have or could have. I thought that, under the ordinances that exist already, that the possibility of, simply them saying that, it could be a public nuisance, it should not be, and it should be odorless at all times and maintained. And, under those conditions, there should be something that are, enforceable. But I don't know, from what I've heard from the discussion here, it doesn't seem that is the case, that you guys can enforce anything based off of the ordinance. And so, I proposed one a few months ago in September, and I can read it again because it's pretty short. I just wanted to make it, very succinct and to the point. But it was basically, let me find it right here. I said, in case of any animals that are not dogs or cats, there should be a proximity requirement of keeping the shelter area, holding pens or coops or houses of such animals 5 yards or 15 feet from any neighbor's windows or doors, to prevent unwanted odors, noises, and not become a public nuisance. And that's really all I wanted added to it, so that they could move it, since it seemed like, we don't want it to go anything beyond a neighborly dispute. But, in the act of being good neighbors, we feel that they should be able to move it. And kind of like what Mr. Alves, Ed brought up, was other neighbors, they usually, when they're going to put something in there like that, they let us know. They let my parents know, hey, we're going to do this. Is it okay where we're going to put it? It's not going to bother you. But that wasn't happening. These neighbors just recently moved in a few months ago, and I don't think they're really accustomed to being neighbors with people in the city, because from what I've heard is that they're coming from a more rural area, like even like out in the actual countryside, not around this area in Escalon, but from somewhere else. So really the issue was if they can move it, and not that we don't care for them to ban chickens. We don't want chickens banned. I mean, that's always a good thing, like all those points that were brought up, like why chickens are good to keep are good reasons. But I feel that, according to the ordinances that are already on the books, I think that there's room for you guys to help us figure out the issue, and help us ask the neighbors to cordially move their chickens to a place where we know for a fact they have a lot of space in that backyard, and they have just as much space as my parents do. And like I said, it's about 70 feet to 70 feet wide. And that would go without having to, make an amendment or, an amendment to the ordinance. So that's all I really have to say to that effect.
All right. Are there any other people who'd like to speak
On the phone?
on the phone? Tammy?
I haven't gotten anybody. Is there anybody else on the line with GoToMeeting that would like to talk? It doesn't look like it.
Okay.
So we can go to the audience.
All right. Would anyone like to come up and speak at the podium on behalf of what's going on this evening? Yes, you may. Anyone, take your turn, come up and speak. Give us your name, your address, and don't need addresses any longer, just your name, please.
Mayor Alves and City Council Sean Stroman. I'll proudly tell you my address, 2445 Yosemite Avenue.
We know where you live.
So this is kind of unclocking believable that we are even wasting our time talking about this. But first of all, I would just, on a more serious note, I would like to make a request that if there are any decisions on this matter, that you recuse yourself, Mayor Alves, just because of the relationship that you have with the neighbors.
What relationship is it I have?
That
They're
he
my
ju-
neighbors. And I have to excuse myself from everybody in this town. They're all my neighbors. We don't have a relationship. We're not good friends.
Okay,
Okay, so why would I want to do that?
just for the appearance sake, but.
I don't think it's reasonable.
Okay.
Thank you.
The other item is that, something to consider is that the last time I checked, can you prove that the flies, I guess the basis of the public nuisance, the flies, are we certain that the flies actually came from the chickens and not from the dog poop? Because last time I checked, you can't really track flies. So I guess every complaint that the Barones are noting, how are we certain that the problem is actually coming from the chicken coop to begin with? We don't know. And so, their complaints are smell and flies. Dogs go to the bathroom, and if the dog run is in close proximity to the chicken coop, we can't prove if the flies are coming from the chickens or from the dogs themselves. So I only ask that, I think this is absolutely crazy. I understand about being a good neighbor, but that's probably where the issue is, and the city shouldn't get involved in this issue. That's all I want to say.
Good evening. Thank you for hosting us. My name is Sherry Hill. I live in Escalon, obviously, right by the high school. And I've had the pleasure of speaking to you before a few years ago. Help me understand. So again, there was a complaint, and according to nuisance, it's not a nuisance. So there's no issue there.
The determination was made by the officer that went out there that there was no nuisance, correct?
Okay. Then I ask, what's before you tonight? Why is it even here? It's an issue between two neighbors, not 7,500 residents. So I would ask that you would please consider putting this back into the hands of two neighbors, because it will affect quite a few of us. I have hens. I've had hens for 6 years. All of my neighbors, I've had 3 neighbors tonight said, you want us to go with you? Because they love them. They bring their grandkids over. They come. They all have names. Flies, I don't have flies. I have 4 hens. I have 2 dogs. My dogs give me more flies than my hens do. My hens bring joy. My bottom line is this. Really, truly, 7,500 residents, an issue between 2 neighbors.
I have a
Let it
question
stay
for you.
there. Yes.
Where are your chickens located on your property?
They're on my side yard between my neighbor's house and mine.
And yours, and what's the setback between the two?
On that particular side, I probably have 20 feet, and they have free range in that whole 20 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I say something real quick?
No, you'll have to wait, please.
Wait till you're done and we'll bring it up.
Okay, that was a long pause, so I thought it was over.
My name is Gabriela Estrella. I stand before you this evening to express my opposition to enacting an ordinance that would place restrictions on chickens within city limits. Prior to the change of mayorship, this issue was brought before the council and laid to rest when the Dutras were found to not be in violation of any current ordinance. The pristine condition of the coop and its well-thought-out design and build was also notated by city officials. So what exactly is the issue at hand? If the issue is the projected nuisances that have been outlined by Mr. Barone, including but not limited to noise, smells, public health concerns, attracting flies and rodents, and cleanliness of coops, the keeping of chickens alone does not cause those nuisances listed above, but rather they result from improper care and maintenance. A properly shaped ordinance can prevent potential nuisances by establishing clear guidelines for chicken care and maintenance. Education, not sanction, is the key to ensure proper care and reduce the potential for nuisances and complaints. If the issue is a distance restriction, then average size lots need to be taken into consideration, so said restriction wouldn't prevent people with smaller lot sizes from being able to keep chickens. If the issue is having chickens, period, well then it should be noted that Escalon is a rural town and farming community. Upon purchasing my home here, I signed a document that explained I was moving into a county that embraces farming. Mr. Barone has identified that his neighbor diagonal from him also has chickens, yet they're not an issue for him. The neighbor directly across from him has screeching macaws and also do not bother him. And let's not forget about the herd of cows that resides less than a quarter mile away from Mr. Barone's residence that I presume also does not bother him. Yet the stench from their cow dung on hot summer nights can be smelt miles away. There are many benefits to having chickens. They are natural compost makers who love to eat weeds and pesky little bugs around the yard. They reduce food waste by eating leftovers and table scraps. They provide a high protein, fresh food source for my family. My children, who love them dearly, have learned to be more responsible by caring for them. They love to check for the eggs, love to fill their water and food, as well as put them to sleep at night. More importantly, having chickens brings an increased awareness to children of our relationship to the food cycle, and it is important that our children know where their food comes from. In these difficult times, we should be looking to improve food security and upward economic mobility by taking steps towards building a resilient food economy. In fact, cities and towns across the nation are looking at how they can be more sustainable. Allowing chickens is one step towards that goal of increased sustainability. By forming a just and well-thought-out pro-chicken ordinance, Escalon can allow residents the right to keep their chickens while also addressing the concerns of those who oppose. The issue of chicken keeping should not be approached with a, the issue of chicken keeping should be approached with a how rather than a yes or no, as a growing list of pro-chicken cities across the nation have shown that it can be done successfully. I urge you to rethink your position on this matter and consider what is best for the greater good of this community and not one disgruntled neighbor. I also have chickens. When I got my chickens, I was battling cancer, and I got them as kind of a pick-me-up because I was dying, and my husband wanted to make me feel better. They have made a huge impact on my life. I happen to have a property in town that is essentially 2 lots within one. My coop is about 50 foot by 7.5 foot. It sits directly on the fence line. It is custom built by myself. I also custom built the Dutras coop. The coop is not movable because the prior owners of the home had created a dog run on that side of their home in which the bottom part is already adhered to the ground itself. I used that bottom as the bracing to build this coop. I checked every ordinance for the city as well as the county prior to building this. I was very diligent and did my homework. I also made this coop so that if there were to be any sort of fire access or electrical or paramedic access, the home in which the chickens go to sleep at night is very easily moved to one end, giving plenty of space for them to get by. It is not there's not 4 walls on it. It's not a structure. It does not have a roof. It is chicken wire and 2x4s. I put the drainage on there to prevent any water, because it is on a slope, the roof, from going into the neighbor's yard. I have actually been a mediator between the Dutras and Mr. Barone. We've had several wonderful conversations. And just prior to the holidays, I introduced him to James Dutra, the husband of Jenna, and tried to find some sort of a resolve, since they were found to not be in any violation of an ordinance. And Mr. Barone and James Dutra offered to settle this disagreement by agreeing to put up a 7-foot vinyl fence. And Mrs. Dutra can speak to what has happened since that point, but the windows that he discusses are clearly bathroom windows. They're so big. They were home when I built the coop. They never said anything to me. They waited until it was done. And since I did my homework, I'm not the homeowner of the home, but as a homeowner here in town, I don't really need to get my neighbor's permission to do something that's well within my right to do. And so that wasn't thought of on my part.
My question would be, is why there instead of somewhere else on the property?
Mr. Alves,
Just a moment, please.
the home, the way the home is built, there are 2, you would call side yards. One is not accessible from the front. So technically, fire department would have to hop the fence to get in. It was more desirable because they had used it previously, the owners, as a dog run. The other side of the house is a thoroughfare. There's a shed over there. And they're putting in a brand new pool that's going to consume that entire backyard. So having any 15-foot restrictions is going to put that coop in the middle of the pool. It's not that we didn't want to move the coop. The issue is that it's adhered to the structure that was existing. I can't just pick it up and move it.
I have a question. How long has that coop been there?
I built it in the end of July, and I was out there building it. I'm partially disabled and I work full-time, so it probably took me a good 2 weeks of being out there 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I built it all by myself. So they came and went and never once said anything.
Thank you.
All right, you have any more you'd like to add?
I think that's all.
Excuse me.
Very much. All right, next individual who'd like to speak, please come, give us your name.
Hi, I'm Ann Shaddix, and I'm not supporting having chickens. I would just ask that you check into a daycare center and the relationship of a backyard with chickens to daycare or learning centers that have children, because I believe that there are some regulations that children cannot be exposed to that. So I'm just asking the staff to check that, as well as everything else that you're doing to
Thank you, Ann. All right,
talk about it.
next, please.
I wanted
to bring you guys actual pictures of the coop. I don't know if I can pass them around.
I've already seen it.
So I come before you, this is my coop. My name is Jenna Dutra. I live on 554 Chenin Blanc here in Escalon. I come before you to discuss backyard chicken coops, setbacks, requirements, and chickens. We moved to Escalon in January of 2018. What drew us to this town was a small town feel, the agriculture, and the community. Raising 7 kids, we have the right and choice for our family. We found the right choice for our family. After renting for 2 years, we decided it was time to put down roots and buy a home. As you can see from the photos that I have given for your review, this skillfully custom-built chicken coop was built when we purchased our home in July of 2020. Prior to us purchasing our home, we have raised hens without any problem for 6 years, including within city limits. We did our due diligence and checked every code and ordinance before construction to make sure that we followed the codes and were in compliance. This issue of chicken coops was already put before the council and put to bed, and yet here we are again. It had come up before in late August, early September. First, it was the issue of hens and how it smelled. Per animal control, we had to get rid of 4 of our hens, and we were cited for this. We abided by what they said and donated our chickens to a local farmer. The animal control then came back to view our coop and did a chicken count and gave us compliments on how well and clean our coop is kept. We thought this issue was dropped, but then it became a code issue regarding structures. Then after further review and compliance with allowing the viewing of our coop in person, it was deemed not a structure, and we were given the all clear that our coop was perfectly fine, and it was put to bed. Then again, here we are, with a change of mayorship, it's up for an issue and discussion again. As I posted this issue on our Escalon residents page on Facebook, out of the 130 comments on Facebook, only 1 was negative. So I ask, how many have come to this council before and made this an issue? Is this involving our community or one disgruntled neighbor? In considering these new codes and regulation, how many people will this affect? Because of the circumstances of our country today, more people are becoming aware of how animals live in suburban areas and how they're turning towards homesteading strategies to provide for themselves and their families. In fact, when we purchased our home, like everyone else in San Joaquin County, we had to sign a form acknowledging that we live in a farming community. I have it here if you guys want it. Homesteading is a lifestyle and sufficiency. We have 7 kids. These eggs are we live on these eggs. I can't even tell you how many eggs we go through in a week. Being able to feed our family farm fresh eggs rather than store-bought eggs is a much healthier option for our kids. Initially, these chickens were part of our kids' ag bio class. They learn how to raise them from baby chicks to adult chickens, and they've become part of our family. There's a name for every single chicken in our coop. They have learned responsibilities and for caring for this coop and enjoy their eggs. We do not keep a dirty coop. In fact, we've gone the extra mile in using cedar shavings and maintenance it weekly to ensure that our coop is kept clean and no smell is emitted. Regrettably, as mentioned, we are before you due to 1 neighbor complaint. And a base decision on 1 complaint is unreasonable, not only to us, but the residents of Escalon who are also taking part in raising chickens for our FFA kids projects and ag projects in our community. We find it wasteful of the city of Escalon to use resources like this to adopt new city ordinances based on 1 single complaint. Not to mention, Escalon community is known for 2 things, football and our agriculture. And that's all I have for you guys. So this is my coop. This is my home. These are my hens. I'm the one that was this coop was already, my frustration is that this was already brought up and it was already deemed okay. The police have come out to my house numerous times. They've even brought the recruitees or people working in the animal shelter to come look at our coop to say, this is how coops should look like. And I don't know why this is being brought up again when it was already deemed not a structure. We're not in any violations, nothing.
I have a question for you real quick.
Yes.
I couldn't tell from the pictures, is any part of that gutter or that pipe, does it
No.
go over their fence at all?
Not at all. It's on the fence line.
It's
So
right on
like there's that 2x4
Uh-huh.
that's on top. It's like directly on top of that.
Okay.
Nothing goes over to
I
his
just couldn't
side.
tell from the picture, thank you.
One thing I want to get clear, I've heard references a couple times this evening that everything was good until the new mayor came on. I had nothing to do with this, number one. Number two, that's weak. That's pretty weak. You know, this issue is an issue because it is an issue, whether I agree or disagree with it, okay? We're here as a group trying to resolve an issue here. Everyone talks about the benefits of the chickens. No one's disputing the benefits of the chickens. We all understand chickens are valuable. We all understand the need for them. There's never an issue there. The issue is privacy and how it encroaches or doesn't. That's the issue here.
I don't sit in my coop for 6 to 8 hours a day. I go in the morning, I feed them, I get their eggs, I'm out of there. I am not sitting there looking over their fence. I'm not over there. I'm in and out in maybe a 2-minute period. So what privacy are we discussing?
Well, I think
I don't think anybody wants to sit in a chicken coop for hours on a
I don't
day.
think you're understanding the point. The point is, you have another individual who feels encroached on. Whether it's right or wrong, it's something we need to resolve, one way or another.
So this is one disgruntled neighbor.
Well, we take them one at a time. I mean, it's not like we had a dozen of them to deal with. I mean, this does set some precedents. We need to make sure, as we do in all our ordinances, that we address the issues that come up. This is part of the process. And it's not saying that you're gonna get what you want or he's gonna get what he wants.
But
All
why is it
says-
an
let me
issue
finish,
again?
please. Let me finish. What it says is, we're all gonna look at this and weigh it and try to figure out what's the best solution for everyone involved. That's what we're doing here this evening. And we don't gain anything by accusing other people of doing things that they never did. We're gonna talk about the issue and try to resolve it. That's what we're here for.
No one's pointing a finger. My issue is that people have already come out to my house. I've already had to get rid of hens. I've done everything feasibly possible to make this, there's nothing wrong with it. Anybody who's come to my home, I can welcome you any day, any time to walk in that coop and find an issue with it. There's none, and it was deemed none. And this was already brought before council and then taken off the board because there's no issue. And now here we are again. That's my issue.
Well,
I have questions.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So, how was this issue raised initially?
Take me a minute to think about that. But if I recall correctly, it turned into a code enforcement complaint where somebody had called in or the neighbor had called in and reported the chicken coop, and they were under the impression that setbacks would be required because if I recall correctly, they considered it to be a structure of some sort, therefore it should have a setback requirement to it. And so they had asked us initially to check the setback on that, to which we had responded that the setback at that time wasn't required.
And it's different than how it's being raised today. The request is to consider enacting a new ordinance to require setbacks.
Yes, it's progressed since then,
It's a portable
yes.
structure, it's not permanent.
just a minute, please. You'll have your opportunity.
And in regards to the setbacks, so there is the setbacks, a fence issue, structures have to be 5 feet away from the fence. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Correct.
They have their sheds on our fence line. So if anything, then they're in the wrong because their shed is on my fence line. It's not 5 feet away from my fence line, but I'm not sitting there nitpicking about his shed being on my fence line.
We've dealt with the shed issue. For
It's
others.
just insane. I don't sit there there's so many things that I can nitpick about his property, his dogs and everything else, and I choose not to because it's not an issue for us.
Well, so here's where we're at. So we're elected by the community and we need to represent all members of the community, right?
Jeff.
So,
Can you talk in the mic, sorry, so they can hear you?
okay, so our role is to represent everybody in the community. So if somebody comes to us with a concern, an issue, a suggestion, whatever, I think we're required to accept that, have a discussion.
I understand that.
You know, and get input from the community. And it's pretty clear what the input is from the community based on your post, based on the people that have shown up here, and the discussion that we're having tonight. So it's not, we're trying not to, single you out or your coop or anything like that. It is an issue that was raised, so we're gonna address it one way or another.
I respect that.
But to get back to exactly what the issue is, we have an ordinance on the books, and it allows you to keep chickens, and it allows you to get a potbelly pig, another, couple animals here or there. I don't see any reason why we need to change that, and it doesn't sound like anybody's asking us to consider that. So we move on from that issue. So then we look at the setbacks. Well, there's nothing on the books that says that you've got a setback requirement for your coop. All right, so we have no authority to do that. So then the next issue is, it's a nuisance. Well, police department goes out, it's not a nuisance, so it doesn't fall under that category. So the city has kind of taken itself through the steps that we would normally take when there's a code enforcement issue or some issue. So now we get to the point where now the request is, hey, the city should consider setbacks for chicken coops, all right? So what I'm hearing is, even if we were to move forward and consider an ordinance that would require setbacks for chicken coops, how's that gonna impact yours? So are we gonna go in and say, okay, we've enacted this ordinance, so now everybody that is in violation of that, go rip your chicken coops up and move them to a 15-foot setback? That's not the business that we're in. You know, we try and enforce issues when they're a public safety issue or it's a public nuisance. We've already addressed the public nuisance issue. It's not, according to the officers that were out there. So I just don't see that this is something that we need to take action on. I don't see it as, why do we need an ordinance at this point? I don't think it's gonna fix the situation that you have there. So now you need to kind of look for other ways to try and resolve that problem.
And which we have.
Yeah, and I don't know that
we've already agreed to it, so this
Yeah.
is where I don't understand why we're doing this again.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to
Excuse me,
clarify
I'd like
where
to
we're
speak
at.
because there's been a lot of people being able to speak multiple times, and I've waited patiently. My name is Raul Barone again.
Raul.
If you want to speak, you're going to have to wait your turn, Raul. I'll get to you.
So.
All right, I'm just saying, a lot of people are having the chance to repeat
understand.
and talk back.
You're going to get your opportunity.
So as a council, we've got to figure out, okay, is there something that we can do that can help resolve the problem? And I don't know that we're there. I don't see us.
This isn't a council issue, this
Right.
is a neighbor dispute,
And that's what
in
we're,
which we've come to agreeance on, we've talked about it, and they said it was fine. And that's, again, it was deemed okay, and here we are again.
and that's where, you know, I've got to wrap my head around it to make sure that we've, as a city, have followed the rules that are on the books and made sure that we've done our due diligence as a city. And then a lot of times issues come up where we got to look at them and think, well, is there something that some action we should take as a city, whether it's enacting a new ordinance, amending it, or whatever. So my opinion on it is, based on the feedback that I've seen, that's not a city issue at this point. The city has taken the action that it can take. Now it leaves it back into a civil dispute between the two neighbors. So that's kind of my feeling on the whole thing.
All right. Anybody else want to speak before we go on to the phone calls? You guys, anything else?
You still have some in the audience.
I think we
All
saw
right.
some, yeah.
Well, let's let Raul give his feedback. He's been waiting patiently, so let him speak. Go ahead, Raul. What do you got?
Alrighty, thank you. So I just wanted to respond to a few things that I heard. I've been taking diligent notes. You know, I don't know, like, okay. The whole issue is not, and obviously it's been characterized and been said a few times. I just don't appreciate the issue being said that we don't want chickens. We don't care if you guys have chickens. My parents don't care. That should be laid to rest. So anything about that's pretty much irrelevant at this point to beat a dead horse. You know, there was a lady that I believe spoke. I don't believe it was the neighbor. I believe it was the neighbor's friend, whom they got the chickens from. And I'm just asking for clarification. But she said that I believe she was the one who completed the chicken coop sometime in July, and it took her about 2 weeks. If that's correct, or if you know, my general paraphrasing is, you know, in the ballpark, I can attest that is not correct. You know, the gentleman who lives next door, the husband of the lady who spoke afterwards, had completed that chicken coop in about 2.5 days, and I remember because I was house sitting for my parents, and I let them know, you know. And I let them know that.
Hey, come on, let him speak.
Hey, I let them know that, you know, there was, you know, the gentleman next door putting up a chicken coop, it looks like. And I'm like, did they talk to you about it? Like, or anything? And they're like, no, we'll talk to them when we get home because, one, we don't have their phone number. and it's not my necessary business to be speaking on behalf of my parents about what's going on next door at their home. I'm just house sitting for them. So, you know, they have dogs. I maintain them. There's a lot of things in there that they threw out a lot of information and speculation that are just unfounded. There's I don't know. There's apparently they're gonna put a pool in there, and maybe that's why they don't want to move the chicken coop, and that should be taken into consideration. And if that's the case, and maybe they needed to, that's a reason why you should speak to your neighbors, you know, about putting in something that might not easily be moved later. Also, I've heard different things about the chicken coop just from hearing it right now. Some parts, they said there's an immovable part of the chicken coop that is adhered to the ground, but then other people have said that it is movable. So which one is it? Because I believe the distinction is that if it's immovable, it has to be 5 feet from the fence line. And if it's not movable, then it shouldn't be there to begin with.
I think for
that's the case.
clarification, Raul, it was only a portion of it that's movable where the hens house.
There's a portion of it that is movable and there's a portion of it that is immovable. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so the portion that is immovable, would it have to be 5 feet away from the fence line? Is that my understanding? If something's immovable and it's a structure, it should be 5 feet away from the fence line.
No.
So typically, most structures, our code specifically provides an exemption to structures that are under 120 square feet. So if it was larger than 120 square feet, it would be subject to the side yard setback of 5 feet from the property line.
Yeah, okay, so I appreciate the clarification. So
No problem.
that is not an issue. So then that's why, because the fact of the matter is that, you know, and I urge my parents to do this. I urge them to call the police department, animal control every day, which they did not, because they had complaints about it every day. But my parents are very old school. Like I said, they've been there for over 35 years in Escalon. I grew up in Escalon. I went to Escalon High School. I was the captain of my soccer team. We are as Escalonian as Escalonians can be. And we've never had disputes with our neighbors. I don't live in Escalon anymore. I live in Modesto. I'm a teacher at the high school at Downey in Modesto. We've all been respected members of our community. My parents have coached soccer teams in the, you know, since the 90s in Escalon. Even my dad helped the high school soccer team. So the thing is we feel that, and the characteristic of one of the members of the council, I don't know who it is, but it seems like you have a perfunctory and kind of like set in stone or like a preconceived judgment that's going to happen. Because the thing is that although there might not be, you know, the police or the animal control that came out might not have said anything, but I don't believe that's true, because they did tell them to take chickens away. They talked to my dad several times and said, yeah, you know what, like it probably should be moved because there's a potential for disease. So there's different types of talk that's going on. And the whole fact of the matter is that it shouldn't have to get this far. They have a very big backyard. My parents just don't want it on their fence line because they can't keep their pets the way that they want them close to the chickens. There are a lot of flies. My parents, if you ask and you look at anything on their yard, my parents' yard is immaculate. And the backyard, you never get any types of flies from their dogs. We've had dogs, big dogs, since the 90s. And never once has there been a complaint about our dogs. Now, the big thing is that we feel that there's consideration being for the people that are there, and they're the neighbors, and there should be consideration for them. But where's the consideration for my parents? Because the thing is that's the whole point of the ordinance. Maybe the 15 feet is not necessarily going to be a one-size-fits-all solution, but we feel it's a step in the right direction. So maybe you guys can have a conversation about it afterwards and come up with a better solution. Maybe they can move it to a different part of the yard, you know, and maybe they're going to have to change their pool plans. We hope that they don't have to. But also the thing is, why do we have to accommodate their nuisance to us? when we've never presented any nuisance to them, when it could have easily have been stopped if they would have had a conversation with my parents ahead of time and talked about it. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was,
Okay, Raul, you
5
need to
minutes,
wrap
right?
it up.
I'm sorry?
You need to wrap it up. Your time is about up here.
Okay, I don't think that any of the other people were put on time, but I appreciate that and I will. How much time do I have left?
I'll give you 2 minutes. This is your second
Okay,
time
I'll be
speaking
done in
too.
less than a minute. I apologize. Thank you. The other thing is that the lady, I believe their last name is Dutra, the neighbors. She said that there was an agreement between my parents about a fence, and that being the solution. That is incorrect. My dad did talk to the gentleman who's next door, and they did come to putting a fence up, but it was a totally separate issue. It was just something that needs to be done because the fence is really old. So that was never a solution for the chickens and the coop and the smell and everything. So I just want you guys to take into consideration my parents' ideas and you know, the fact that we've been members of the community for a long time. They don't complain about anything. And if they need to establish that this is a nuisance, they will be called every day that it is a nuisance and that there is flies. And if we can take, you know, pictures or videos of it, we will. But we don't know if that, you know, we don't want to violate anybody else's privacy when it can easily be you know, solved between neighbors or in this forum. We don't feel that it should go any further.
Okay, Raul,
So, that's all I have
we're
to
gonna
do.
move on. I appreciate your input. And let's see, where are we at now? Let's see, we've had input from both sides. You've already had an opportunity, let's move on. Let's try to get to the point now we're gonna make a decision here. Do we have suggestions?
Well, okay, this is just a discussion item. It's
Right, it's
not-
correct.
It's
It's
not
not,
requiring any action.
right, correct.
Tammy, how many animals are you allowed in code to have in your backyard?
6
6.
small.
So I could have 6 dogs in my backyard. that
The
correct?
code limits you to 4 dogs.
4 dogs.
6 small animals, which would include dogs, cats,
Have up to 4
birds.
dogs.
Small dogs.
Dogs are considered small, all sizes.
So I could have 4 mastiffs in my backyard.
Yeah, so in the aspect that they had some chickens that had to be removed, they originally had 8 chickens, and this was talking with Ms. Dutra and also through animal control, because animal control is the staff that gets sent out there. There were 8 chickens total in the coop, but they had the 2 dogs, and did you have other pets as well?
Just 2 dogs.
And so they were required to remove the amount of chickens down to 4 to be able to make the total of 6.
Okay.
So.
Anything?
That was the only question I had, just to get a determination of the animals on the property. Considering Mr. Barone's request for his ordinance change, I have a lot of holes to throw at that. He's more concerned with moving a chicken coop, but I guess a dog pen would be okay with 4 big dogs. Because he only wants to move, dogs would be okay, but I want to move the chicken coop. Seems to be a specific target in that situation, when I've seen enough dogs in my day and next door in pens, they can make a bigger mess than a chicken.
I would like to come a little bit to the defense of the Barones. It's totally a one-sided thing here, and a lot of people have got hyped up about, you know, their chickens being taken away. But Raul is bringing to us the complaint of his parents. It's a legitimate complaint. Somebody has, you know, if they have a problem, you call the police, then you go to the community. It doesn't, the council. But I think that there's no decision to be made on this, and I think in an effort to move forward, we need to, you know, move on from this, I think.
Okay,
Yeah, I just think sometimes, you know, you want to try to find a way to accommodate and to help out and maybe reach a conclusion, you know, that satisfies everybody. And sometimes that's just not possible. And I think that, you know, to consider, you know, the Barones, you know, concerns, you know, I think we've done as good a job as we can possibly do, vetting everything out. My concern is that, like I said a few months ago, in this case, I think that in order to try to find some accommodation, or some additional accommodation, we're gonna drag it at half the community. And, I go into a lot of backyards, and I do see a lot of chicken coops, and I do see a lot of very clean chicken coops. And I do see, most of them are closer to the back fence, side fence, And they do have to have a very high degree of cleanliness, of course, in town, not only because they don't want to be called on by their neighbors, but also out of neighborly respect. And it would be, it'd be my recommendation to leave this one alone and go on to the consent calendar.
Second.
So, council, I just wanted to share that there was a chat in the go-to meeting that, the Escalon High School Poultry Advisor is on there. If you guys had any questions regarding, science, questions of
I don't
health,
think we had that issue.
sanitation.
The
Okay.
issue here is,
I just wanted to pass it along that that was
Right.
available to
And
you.
there's somebody in the back.
I see that. They haven't spoke yet?
No.
I don't know.
Come on up. Come on up. I can't, oh, here we go again. If you'd like to speak, you're welcome to come up and speak. You're welcome.
That's what we came here for, because...
And there's no problem with that, nor the attitude.
No, not an attitude, sir. I was asking if I had a chance to speak.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, my name is Cheryl Teague, and I've been a citizen of Escalon for 14 years now. My daughter is a junior at the high school and has attended this district her entire life. As a student, the Ag Leadership Program, she is required to complete an ag-focused project as part of her curriculum, which she's done every year for the last 3 years. This year, she selected raising chickens. We have fully supported her and believe that it's an important responsibility. We live in a farming community, and we embrace the district's encouragement of all of our children to learn the importance of agricultural science. Prior to acquiring the chickens, we checked the local ordinance and ensured we were within all of the rules. We have found that they make minimal noise, that their area is kept clean, and that their coop is unobtrusive to us, and it is invisible to our surrounding neighbors. By raising and caring for them, our daughter has benefited from learning to exhibit higher levels of responsibility and accountability, and we will benefit by collecting their eggs, using their waste as fertilizer for our garden, and feeding them the food scraps that we normally throw away. Additionally, our chickens have their own individual personalities, and we have found having them has brought a lot of fun to our family as having them as pets. The proposed coop setback requirements would box us and many other members of our community out of owning chickens altogether, as the layout of most of our properties do not provide sufficient space to comply with the proposed distances. Furthermore, the distances of 15 feet away from any fence and structure is not based on any demonstrable need, and a chicken coop does not present a structural, fire, or access threat to any fence or structure, and we do not need or want any part of the government to tell us how close we can put any possessions that we have on our property without some sort of emergent safety nexus or exigent circumstance. I do respectfully ask that the council reject the proposed setback requirements. They will impede our freedom and the happiness of us, those of us who own them. We do not, however, see any problem with further discussion or reasonable changes should there be an issue of nuisance claimed by anyone in the community relating to the ownership of chickens. Thank you for hearing our comments.
Thank you. Okay, where we left off was, go ahead, Jeff.
Just to be clear, there is no ordinance in front of us. There was a setback, suggestion made by, I believe, Mr. Barone, but there's nothing before us. There's no ordinance. There's no request to amend anything, so that's why I think the discussion's kind of come to a close. But if anybody else has anything they want to add, we're happy to listen in.
I do. One more thing. I apologize if I could for just 30 seconds.
It's up to you, Mayor.
All right, you got 30 seconds and we're done. That's it. Go ahead.
Got it. How could I go about actually proposing an ordinance?
You've already taken those steps. That's what this process has
The gentleman, the
been.
councilman just said that we're not taking, you guys said that we don't have an ordinance up for discussion.
That is
And-
correct. The discussion is whether or not we would make any kind of amendments to the ordinance, which is why this was put on there for discussion with the city council.
Okay, so how could I come up with an actual ordinance, not just an amendment?
Well, that would need to be the direction of the city council.
Okay. Okay, so I could propose one later or bring up the issue again.
You can bring it up, but it's still the decision of the council whether they move forward and consider any kind of changes to an ordinance.
Understood. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Roland. Go ahead, please.
Okay, well, then I guess that kind of answered my question, because I was just wanting to know, will this be the end of it? Because it sounds like this was already presented once upon a time, and it sounds like it was already a done deal, brought up again. So after today, will this be a done deal? Or
Well,
are you not, I
It
mean,
de-
the way he.
It depends. It depends because there's no definition of what we did. There's nothing, we didn't do anything. So there's really nothing we changed or did. I mean, we can't prevent him from coming down and recommending or offering a change. We can't do anything about that.
So.
He has the right, just like you do, to come and oppose it.
Yeah.
It's nothing we can do about it.
Well, I'm not saying I'm opposed or for, I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if this is gonna be coming up again. Or
Well-
if this is a done deal.
So the last time that this came up, it was asked during staff communications. And at that time, it wasn't chosen to put it on as a discussion item. So if somebody presents something, then we would, during staff communications, ask the council. If they direct staff to put it on the agenda, then that's when the discussion would come in place regarding it. If they don't desire to discuss the matter, then it wouldn't come back on the agenda.
Okay, alrighty, thank you.
And I don't want to read the tea leaves, but if we tonight decide we're not going to do anything with this, then that would be a fairly safe indicator that unless something circumstantial changed, we would probably, who can never guarantee,
I don't know
but
the
at
law.
least as of now,
Right. I don't know the law well enough to say it one way or the other.
Yeah.
And we have an attorney who might be able to answer that question. You want to ask her?
Ann?
So, what, the,
Question, Ann, was whether or not this is a dead horse or can it be revisited? And that was kind of the question.
yeah, well, I think Tammy pretty much answered that. I mean, the city council can always reconsider, but right now, the city council has made its direction clear that it does not wish to amend the ordinance.
Okay.
Now, something could happen, yeah, so
Okay.
it's dead for now.
I appreciate that, Ann. Thank you. Okay, that answers your question. It's dead for now. It can be brought up again. Sean, yes, but make it short. Sure.
So just for my information and everybody else in Escalon, if an ordinance passes, it's not retroactive, correct? So even if you guys directed an ordinance for this issue, this chicken coop is already prior to the ordinance, so it's a
I
moot point.
don't have an answer to that.
Hold on, Ann is trying to answer.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the general rule is that an ordinance is not retroactive, but if the city council wants to, they can make it retroactive in the language of the ordinance itself.
So it's a moot point. I mean, even if you guys can.
Normally it's not retroactive, but it could be.
Okay, so it depends on the city council, basically. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah,
That's all I
Okay,
have.
good enough.
Correct.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. We're done with this? Beat it to death?
That's your
Okay.
call.
All right, gentlemen, you got any more you want to add to it? Any of you?
Thank you, everybody, for your input. I mean,
Thank
it's
you, everybody.
absolutely critical to get your input when these kind of things come up, so it's nice to know where the community stands on it, so much appreciated.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming in tonight.
All right, so next, let's move on to the consent calendar. Consent calendar, these items are considered routine by nature and act upon on a single action unless requested by an individual council member or member of the public for a special consideration. I think number 5 I wanted to talk about. It's number 5. Number 5 I'd like to pull.
And number 4, staff would like to pull, I need to.
Wait, it wasn't number 5, it's F. I'm sorry, you want to pull let's see.
Consent calendar, number 4.
Number 4, D.
Regarding, there's a couple, I just need to note that there's a couple of changes in the
Oh, I'm
contract.
in the wrong place. Hang on, trying to find my
On the
calendar.
screen here.
Oh, I see it up here. Okay, I'm gonna pull okay, that's staff communication I want to discuss. It wasn't on the calendar. Okay, I'm good. I'll accept
Okay,
it.
so just on item number 4, staff would just want to say that in section 3.2.2, it should reference Exhibit A of the contract. And that, the contract will be signed by the city manager, not the mayor, as that's printed on there right
Okay,
now.
good enough. Exhibit.
I move on staff's recommendation.
I was gonna say, regarding item number 2, I will be abstaining from voting on check numbers 9761 and 74606.
Okay, so I'll
Hold on,
accept-
I think we have somebody online.
Hello?
Yeah. I'd like to address number 4.
Is that Kurt?
Yes, so we can pull number
Yeah.
4.
Okay, we'll pull number 4, and then number 2's been
Abstained
abstained by
from,
Robert, so we'll go for the balance. I'll accept the motion for the balance.
He'd moved.
We had a motion?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
we
make
have a
motion
motion.
for the
Do we have a-
balance.
I'm sorry?
I make a motion for the balance.
Very good. I'll
Second.
accept a second. We have a
Second.
motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, let's move to number 4. Go ahead, Kurt.
Thank you, Mayor Alves. A lot of the items that I want to discuss tonight, I had the pleasure of going over with Justin Collins this morning, and I have a lot of confidence in Justin, and I feel real good with what our conversation was. Aside from the conversation with Justin, I would procedurally, on this issue, I didn't see an RFP go out since we have a bid situation. So procedurally there, we don't get to see the same information that we normally do with RFPs, where we have a listing from all the people that did, showing their cost per hours for personnel and so on, like we have almost for everything else. The increase that's being proposed, and I think Jeff is the only one that's really going to feel this, is it's $104 more a year for mow and blow, essentially. And so now we're going from last year's $311 per EDU to $415 per EDU. So that's going to bring the proposed budget to at least $59,345, which, come on, that is a lot of money. And I asked Justin, and I don't know that he was able to pull this information together. I asked him, I said, Justin, what does a frontline beginning employee in public works make? And he thought just roughly it was like $20 an hour or something. I figured, okay, we'll make it 25 with benefits. That equals $52,000 a year.
That doesn't include benefits.
And I look at what was charged in the past, and I don't want. I'm curious as to why the city can't hire somebody and we can control our costs. This is where I'm going. These costs, that $59,000 is base. So that $30,000 that NAGO's going to charge is going to go up by 2.5% per year, and that's going to get staggering here in the next 10 years. If we have, I think it's time to reflect and look at hiring an employee to handle these LLDs. I think the city can control the costs better. And if they can't, I'd like to hear why on it. I'm certainly, willing to listen to why. It's a lot of money. It's going to get more and more. And I'd like the city to address this as a professional bid, just like we would do anything else. When we look at what's going to come up later tonight with the sidewalks, we have what the city costs are versus a contractor. And I think that would have been a good thing to do with this. So I'd like to hear the council's position.
I'd like to hear staff's position. Tammy? you
So, sorry, I was responding to GoToMeeting.
All right.
So I'm not sure, but I think he said something about like
RFP.
$25 okay, so first off, I'll go with the RFP.
Thank you.
Our purchasing policy does not require, when there are certain limitations and a total cost of a contract, to go through an RFP process. It does require us to obtain quotes, which was done in this situation where there were 3 quotes that were obtained from reputable landscaping companies. So that's the response to the RFP.
Can I ask you a question, Tammy? On the 3 bids, they were close, most of them?
Yeah, it's identified in there.
Yeah, I don't have it in front of me right now. I could look it up. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, they're pretty close.
So for Bellaterra, the lowest bidder was 29,700 annually, and the other two bids, one was 34,860, and the other was 36,000.
Okay. Which
So
one?
for the estates, it was 8,100 to the lowest bidder, and then we had two other bids. One was the 8,100, and one was 9,900. Sorry.
So technically, we didn't have to have an RFP, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that took care of that question. What was the other question?
I think it was referencing whether or not if the city took over the landscape services
With what?
with our manpower.
We don't have it.
We don't have it. It would technically require potentially hiring another employee.
More than one.
Or two.
And purchasing of equipment. Based on like the hourly rate that I used for another item that's on here, I think that we would technically come higher for this than the current low bids of the landscaping. But we don't have staffing right now to be able to do that.
We don't have the expertise either.
I think the city ought to look at a broader range here. I think that this points out very seriously how costs are kind of out of control. And that if we look at the city in totality, one employee could handle all of the landscaping currently employed by contractors, not that the city's already doing, but that the contractors are doing, and could do it cheaper. I think all of those costs are going to go up. I mean, this is a significant cost. This is almost a 30% rise. If the city really does a study and look at what it costs for Hogan Park, Main Street Park, all of the LLDs, they may come to the conclusion that, hey, if we hired a full-time employee, bought the equipment, it would be cheaper than having the contractors. And that's what I'm asking you to do the study, figure those things out. Let's look at it long-term versus just a short-term. This is going to be a shock to people that look at their property taxes come next year. And, you may or may not hear about it, but I think in the long run, it might be real prudent to look at all of our costs and see if we are better able to do it ourselves. One thing I left out, and you appreciate this, Robert, is the contract only for tree trimming only goes up to 8 feet. And Justin says that's typical, and anything over that the city does and goes through. And they did. They came through Bellaterra last year and did a lot of tree trimming. That's an additional cost to the district. So this cost here is like a minimum. The city's already doing more work out there anyway. So why don't we look at doing a citywide thing and hiring employees?
Well, council members, do we have any feedback on this recommendation?
I have a couple questions on Bellaterra at the $14,000. How long has that price been enacted? How long has it been $14,000?
Since the district was established,
In what year, give or take?
2001.
So for 19 years, whoever has that contract's been getting paid $14,000 with no raise.
That's right.
That
No
is
elevation in the contract.
That's right.
correct.
I know the Estates is about 13 years old, and that's the same, and that's the
2006, I want to say for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the
2006,
same.
2007, when they actually started putting houses.
Yes.
Okay.
Is the contract, is it just for 1 year, or is it for a certain amount of time, or how's it work?
This contract is a 3-year contract with the ability to extend it, additional 5 1-year terms.
That condition, does it talk to the raises in that period of time? Any increases?
Yes, so it could be subject to a CPI, but not to exceed the 2.5%.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think part of the issue though with the tree, especially in Bellaterra, is that I think it is an 8-foot height requirement. However, the expectation is to have it actually prune much higher, and you want to be able to accommodate the homeowners there. But the only way to do that is to have different equipment, things like that, and that again, even though, you know what the requirement is, that if the expectation is more, you want to try to do more, and therefore that's going to result in increased costs as well.
I think that Kurt makes a good point, and I would be in favor of seeing those numbers if staff could figure out how much it would cost to hire people to do it versus, outsourcing it. And if it's lower to do one than the other, then, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. I think what we think is that it's probably more expensive to hire, employees to do it rather than do this. So I'm in favor of seeing some numbers on that, for what Kurt brings up.
But
Yeah.
are we wanting to hold up, 'cause
No,
the
I'm not gonna
okay.
hold this up.
Okay.
I'm just, for future,
Sure,
because
to explore within this first 3
Yes.
years.
Okay. Jeff, anything?
No, I agree with,
You agree?
Peter,
Very
yeah.
good with Peter. Robert?
so, yeah.
David? Okay, so it's a consensus of the council that we're not gonna hold up the current situation, but we are gonna do a survey or a study to get back to us in terms of what it might cost the city if they were to undertake the endeavor. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
That's mine too. Kurt, does that meet what you're talking about?
I thank the council for looking into that. I think that if you look at, and I don't want to pick on Robert, if you look at what is charged to the city just through one contract, that's over $110,000 a year. I think we can afford an employee to get the work done and be available to Public Works if it's a full-time employee. And I appreciate council's looking into it and their consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kurt. All right, now, that was the end of the discussion for that item. Now may we vote on it? So,
move to approve.
move to approve, we have a second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I can vote on this, right? 'Cause I'm not,
You're out of it.
Yes?
yeah.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. All right, very good. Did we discuss 5 already, or did we pass that already?
We did.
All right, well, I didn't get a question I wanted to ask, and the question was simply this. When you decided to redirect the monies for a different project, did that change the contractor that had the contract?
There was no contract.
There was no contract.
No, we hadn't even finished the engineering for the project.
Good enough, that's all I need
Yeah.
to know. Thank you. We're done. All right, let's move to the next item. Here, what do we got? Staff communications.
Yes, staff communications. So, in the council agenda are department reports, the treasurer's report, police department, animal control, development services, building department, public works, water department, and the wastewater, reports for December. And then added into this, month's reports are, it's indicated NG project update, but it also, there's also an update for all of our other CIP projects also in there. So staff is available to answer any questions on those.
I have a question. I'm sure Kurt would be interested too. He asked it, but is there an update or anything on the wastewater treatment plant, how that's going?
So we are currently working to identify where there is potential funding. And last week we had a conference call with USDA. And so we're currently working through some of that.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
All right. Any more you want to talk about, Tammy, on this staff communications?
Sure.
What's next?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did want to point out that we are now accepting credit cards in the office.
Good, I like that. Good.
We have switched vendors and changed rates, so that
For the water, is it for the water or what?
it's for water, business license.
Anything?
There's a limit on what you can charge,
What's
because
the limit?
sometimes building permits can get extensive, but 2,500.
25, that's a pretty good
Yeah.
hunk of money.
Yeah. So, we do have that option available, and we are working on getting it at our animal shelter as well. We have to
Are we
train
charging a
staff.
fee for the use of the card?
We are not at this point.
Thank you. I know that would come up. Okay, how about the rest of the report?
Dominique, did you have anything else for it? For staff report?
Not that I believe, no.
Any other questions, council, on the staff communications?
I have none.
None?
Oh, yes. So
Okay.
there was one other item.
Go ahead.
Just wasn't sure.
In recent recently, staff was doing some code enforcement, and there was a particular code enforcement regarding the Azores Hall, because they have 2 C-van storage containers in their parking lot, and those are technically not allowed. So staff is looking for some direction from the council, if we continue these efforts or what direction the council would like us to go. We have enforced these containers on other properties. So, we know that they've reached out to council members, so we're looking for some direction on it.
Want to speak on this?
Sure.
All right, Jeff would like to speak, then I'll follow Jeff.
Yeah, it sounds like it was not necessarily complaint driven. It was city taking action based on other actions that have been taken in that particular area. I think there's a public benefit derived from the Azores Hall, from the people that use that hall, and I don't think we need to take any unnecessary action on those containers. It sounds like if they wanted to add additional containers, we might want to address that with them. But
I would make that recommendation.
yeah, the 2 existing, they don't seem to create any problem for the surrounding area. They use them for storage. They participate in a number of city functions and assist with city functions. Yeah, it's not a public safety issue, not a nuisance. So I think we just stop any enforcement action at this point on the existing containers, but just advise them that there's a potential if they tried to add additional containers that the city might need to take enforcement action.
All right, I would echo that sentiment. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak in favor of leaving them as they are, with the exception that they will not add on to them?